The Carolina Panthers vets reported to camp on Tuesday morning. No drama at all. Panthers general manager Dan Morgan also spoke to the media, answering some of the lingering questions heading into training camp. What are those and what were his answers? Well, we'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Friday, the weekly Friday mailbag is back here on the show. So either at me or DM me. But of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to get your weekly Friday mailbag questions into me right now. Today's episode of the Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The vets are here in Charlotte for training camp, which starts on Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. sharp. We are so close to the football season being here. I suppose technically the season has begun now that all 90 players here in Carolina have reported for training camp, but you and I both know the season doesn't really get underway until toe meets leather down in New Orleans, 1 o'clock Eastern time there in September. So we'll be there shortly. But so far, no drama here in Carolina. There's headlines all around the league. Jordan Love in Green Bay wants a new deal. He's not showing up until he gets it. Hassan Reddick, the Jets, foolishly traded for him from Philadelphia. He wants a new deal, hasn't gotten it. He's not showing up. Brandon Ayuk, a name y'all have asked me about, he did show up to camp there in San Francisco as they continue to find a new deal for him or possibly a trade partner. Might it be Carolina? Don't know whether the Panthers will be in on that deal. They certainly should be interested, but it may cost a little bit too much. But no drama here in Carolina at all. All 90 guys are here. All 90 guys passed a conditioning test. And Dan Morgan spoke to the media on Tuesday, and he was singing the praises of the roster and also answering some lingering questions that we discussed last week, but he also discussed some different ones on Tuesday morning when speaking to the media here in Charlotte. So on today's show, I want to go over a couple of those questions that he answered, what he had to say, and also discuss what Bryce Young and Jadeveon Clowney, the two players who spoke to the media on Tuesday, had to say as they enter into their training camps here in Charlotte, starting again on Wednesday morning at 9:30 a.m. Starting off with Dan Morgan. Had a conversation with a few people on Twitter on Monday evening just about the Panthers edge rusher situation and also the Panthers cornerback situation as it currently stands. You look at DJ Woonem. He is starting off PUP. He's starting off training camp on the physically unable to perform list, which also means PUP, as I just said momentarily. You also have the issue of Amari Barno, who tore his ACL last year, week 16 against the Packers. He's not available. He's starting off on PUP, and I would not expect him to be available right away. Corner, there's a need there. If they just add one more player, I feel like the Panthers are in about as good of a spot as they can truly be, considering the majority of the roster construction has already been done. And there will be plenty of guys that come in and out of the roster, plenty of workouts Dan Morgan talked about on Tuesday. And that's going to be really guys who are at the back of the roster who may not even be making the team in the first place, but would be possible not training camp, but practice squad type of guys who, yes, would be here during training camp. So there are concerns that the fans have out there, that media members like myself have about the edge rusher and cornerback groups here in Carolina. So Dan Morgan was asked on Tuesday, do you have concerns there? What is the plan as you have two guys that you would likely rely on, especially DJ Woonem this season, who aren't presently available once camp opens up on Wednesday morning? Dan Morgan said he feels good about the group, as he's not going to sit here and tell us that he doesn't feel good about the group. He says that DJ Wonnum is getting back healthy and doing everything that he can from a rehab standpoint to get back. Quote, they're going to look to add depth at every position. That's something that Scott Fitterer said. It's something that he now has said, Dan Morgan, multiple times this offseason when asked about position groups in particular. DJ Wonnum, there was wondering, but someone asked whether he had a setback. What was the deal there with the partially torn quad he suffered late last season when playing with the Vikings? Dan Morgan did not want to get into the particulars. He said nothing that's really set him back. Quote, we expect him to progress, and then we'll see where he's at after training camp. And I found that to be interesting that he said where he's at after training camp. Training camp ends on August 15th when the Panthers have their final 14 practices with the New York Jets. Will be a joint practice ahead of that second preseason game, the one here at home against the Jets at Bank of America Stadium. But it sounds like, from what he just said there, they're not expecting DJ to be out at practice for the next 3 weeks, and likely seems like he's going to miss the first 2 preseason games, if not all 3 preseason games heading into the season. And that does not necessarily bode well for him and for the Carolina Panthers. As we think about last year, one of the big free agent signings. I don't know how big of a free agent signing DJ Wonnum was. One of the big free agent signings last year, Miles Sanders, missed a lot of time because of a groin, missed the entire preseason, then came out and did not look like the guy the Panthers were hoping he would be, or at least expecting really him to be when they gave him that contract, the highest contract that a running back signed in free agency last year in 2023. I have my concerns that DJ Wonnum is not going to be there for training camp, wasn't around for the offseason program, that once the season begins, if he's available, that he is going to give them the kind of production the Panthers were hoping. And knowing that you can get out of the deal after a year, does he get another season in Carolina when he could potentially be fully healthy in 2025? We will see. As far as cornerbacks go, a lot of questions back in May, back in June, and even now about Stephon Gilmore, who resides here locally in the Charlotte area, and whether he will one day be a Carolina Panther. Stephon was talking to somebody recently out in the media saying that there's not, 64 corners better than me in the NFL, and I agree with that. Come up in a good season in Dallas, good season prior to that Indianapolis, has been healthy the last couple of years, did have a shoulder issue at the end of the season last year in Dallas that he likely had to get cleaned up this offseason. Haven't really gotten much intel as far as that goes, whether he did have surgery or not. And Dan Morgan was asked about him. He said that they're going to contact all free agents that are on the street and see whether they're a fit for them, saying, quote, we're going to sign guys who fit what we do. Not necessarily saying yes or no as far as where's Stephon Gilmore, and that is close. But he's saying they're talking to all the guys out there available who potentially could be a fit and help out this team down the line. Now, right now, Stephon Gilmore is not a Carolina Panther. He may not be a Carolina Panther. The Panthers did sign Dane Jackson from Buffalo, where he's been their spot star the last couple seasons, also their number 3 corner. Dan Morgan, somebody who pounded the table when he was with the Bills under Brandon Beane, wanting Dane Jackson in the 7th round out of Pittsburgh. He's now here in Carolina, getting an opportunity to be a starter. Not getting paid a lot of money, but getting the opportunity to be the starter opposite of J.C. Horn at that outside corner spot. So Dan was asked, how confident are you in Dane Jackson? He said, quote, we signed Dane for a reason. He's a tough, scrappy, smart player who fits great in this defense. But again, we're going to try to create competition at every position. We're going to be smart, but we're going to be aggressive. I don't see competition right now at the other starting spot at corner. I look at it as JC. Obviously, no one's coming in to compete with him. Then Dane Jackson. Then you look at Troy Hill in there in the slot at the nickel. I don't see the competition anywhere else. Charles Smith-Wade would have been another guy who would have competed there for that nickel spot, potentially could play outside as well, having done that the majority of his career at Washington State. Didn't make the transition until the Senior Bowl inside. He's right now starting off camp on PUP. Not sure when he'll be available. But right now, there are some serious concerns. And I think legitimate concerns from the fan base and from people also observing the team, such as myself, when you look at the corner and edge rusher rooms here in Carolina. I don't know if those concerns are going to be subsided. I put out a list from overthecap.com of available free agent edge rushers and asked people who excites you. And that's not me necessarily saying that I'm not excited by the group. I just wanted to know who excites you. And someone pointed out, hey, Justin Houston, he's available. He's someone who has familiarity with the coaching staff. We go back to last season. We were right here in his position in Carolina. having this conversation of they need to get more help. They need to find somebody else. It can't just be Burns and Haynes, DJ Johnson. That's a lot of pressure to put on the third-round pick, who's a project coming out of Oregon, and they need somebody else. And they brought in Justin Houston because of his relationship with Frank Reich, and we saw how that played out, where he had a grand total of half a sack last season, and then once Reich was gone, he asked out, left Carolina, finished off the season. I don't even remember where he finished it off. I believe it was Miami, and he's right now, again, heading into August, training camp beginning, not on a team and available as a free agent. So we'll see what they do there at corner and what they do also at edge rusher. And also a little update too. Let me bring it up on my Twitter account. I saw this and someone tagged me on it too, but I looked at this last night. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN.com reporting that the Panthers are going to host Jerry Jacobs, a free agent corner who started 12 games last year with 3 interceptions and 8 pass breakups for the Detroit Lions. That would make sense, bringing in a veteran corner who can start for you and bring in some true competition. Because right now, I do not see the true competition for Dane Jackson and even really Troy Hill at this point in time for those 2 corner spots outside of what J.C. Horn is going to provide the Panthers this year, provided, of course, that he is healthy. There's another question pertaining to the Panthers heading into training camp, and it's a pretty big question for the organization. How committed are they to Bryce Young? Dan Morgan answered that on Tuesday, and we'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. One of the biggest questions heading into training camp is the Panthers' commitment long-term and really short-term when it comes to their quarterback, Bryce Young. I've been asked by listeners multiple times this offseason, if things don't go great for Bryce this year in his second year in Carolina, new coaching staff, Dave Canales, the quarterback whisperer, being brought in here to help get Bryce to play not just league average football, but look like the number 1 overall pick. And for the Panthers to get the most out of an asset, they gave up a lot to get and to put here as the face of the franchise. So if he does not play well, does Carolina move on after 2 seasons? Or does Bryce get a 3rd year? The commitment level to Bryce Young, that is something people are wanting to know, and something that Dan Morgan was directly asked on Tuesday morning. How committed are you and the organization to Bryce Young? He said, quote, "I love Bryce. Obviously, I felt very highly of him when we drafted him. I know that he's on a mission. I know that he's committed to being great. I know that he's committed to this franchise and making this franchise great. We're going to try to do everything we can in our power to surround him with the best players, the best protection, receivers, running backs. So we've got to do our part as well. I know that Bryce is hungry. He's focused, and we're super excited about him." So he said he loves Bryce. He felt very highly about him when they drafted him, and he's on a mission. He never necessarily said how committed he is to Bryce Young. He says that Bryce is committed to the franchise and making the franchise great. They didn't necessarily say right there how committed the franchise is to Bryce Young being the long-term guy, which is really the question everyone wants to know. But the key thing that Dan Morgan did say is they have to do everything in their power to surround him with the best players, the best protection, receivers, and running backs. As far as players go, I don't see any standouts right now offensively. They can come along the road. It doesn't have to happen right now. I just don't see the standouts. I don't see the superstars like a DJ Moore and a Christian McCaffrey. I don't see anybody at that level. Deontay Johnson could be that after the season's over. We could see Jonathan Brooks get healthy and be that once the season's over. Xavier Legette as well. Right now, I don't see those guys. Johnson would be the most likely. just based off of experience, having been an all-pros, a returner, being a Pro Bowler before the last time he had a good quarterback under center, that can happen. So best player is not quite there. Best protection, they brought in Robert Hunt, they brought in Damian Lewis, they brought in Josh Nijman, and they brought back some guys who were starters last year who are now players who are depth for the Panthers. So they definitely try to do that this offseason. Receivers, again, they draftedly get in the first round. They traded for Deontay Johnson. He has brought in also Jadeveon Sanders at tight end. They have gone out to find those receivers. Running backs, they drafted Jonathan Brooks. They have Chuba here. They have Miles Sanders, who they brought in last year before even trading and going and get Bryce Young. I guess no, they already made the trade before they even drafted Bryce Young. They've done it as far as best protection, receivers, running backs. They set up to do that this offseason, and they put Bryce Young in a better situation than he was a year ago. So they have shown the commitment to at least being able to evaluate him as far as commitment long-term. We'll find out really after the season and maybe after next season and whether they pick up the fifth-year option for Bryce. He's got to do it, and they've given him an opportunity to do that. As far as his progression during the offseason, Dan Morgan talked about every day working with Dave Canales. Bryce Young has gotten better and better with what Coach Canales wants him to do, whether it's with footwork, whether it's timing, just all the little details. He's very coachable, and he says he thinks working under Dave is a really good match for Bryce Young. And also, we're looking for that jump. It's Bryce Young's second camp. He had a very long offseason, probably the longest offseason he's ever had in his football life since really high school. What kind of jump is he expecting to see from Bryce Young in his second camp? He said he mentioned a progression of Josh Allen in Buffalo and Russell Wilson in Seattle, and also says I believe in Bryce. I think he has all the tools to be a great quarterback in this league. Just noting that Russ, he made progressions. Josh Allen, once they started to get some guys around him, you saw what he's able to become and what he is right now in the league. He sees that. Dan Morgan does when it comes to Bryce Young heading into the season. So the commitment is there, and at least has been there so far, getting the personnel around him this offseason. Just what will the commitment be long-term and even short-term for Bryce based off of his play? We don't know yet, as that's something that will be answered, in due time. Going over now to what are the expectations for 2024? That was something that Dan Morgan was asked on Tuesday. I wonder what y'all's expectations are. Like last year, I will put it out there on social media, ask you, what are your expectations? At least for me, I'm not expecting a lot, and I'm done predicting any sort of playoffs and like this team's under the radar. They got to do it first. I got to see it to believe it, because right now it's been 6 years, 6-season playoff drought, and feels like it's probably going to be 7-year playoff drought. We'll see how it pans out. Dan Morgan, though, he's not really focused on expectations. He said he's not going to put any expectations on anything right now. There's a lot of work ahead of them from a personnel standpoint, and the players know they need to put in the work. He said, quote, in terms of playoffs, we'll reach that when we're ready. Well, everyone around here in Carolina is ready, Dan. I'm sure he's ready, but looking at the organization as a whole, they'll reach that when they're ready. Right now, we're focused right now on today, tomorrow, and just getting better as a team and an organization. And he was asked by Joe Personnel of The Athletic, have they taken a different approach where it felt like in recent years when you go out and get Sam Darnold, when you bring in Baker Mayfield, when you make all the moves they've made with trades like Gilmore in season and CJ Henderson in season and all the other things they've done, really felt like they were trying to win right away. Looking at the division and knowing that's wide open, even when Brady was here, they were trying to win. Now it feels like they're taking a long-term approach to this whole deal and know the NFC South still isn't that strong. And this is what Dan Morgan had to say, quote, we have a plan. We have a plan in place. We have a process. We're aligned in that plan. We're going to stick to it. I feel like we're disciplined and stick to our plan on building this thing that we will build a winner eventually. And I think that we're pretty confident in that. Let me reread that again. He said, we have a plan. We have a plan in place. We have a process. We're aligned in that plan. We're going to stick to it. And he really emphasized that when he said that we're going to stick to it. I feel like if we're disciplined and stick to our plan on building this thing, that we will build a winner eventually. And I think that we're pretty confident in that. I haven't seen a plan in recent years. I have come up here on this show and I have asked multiple times over the last 3 seasons, what is the plan? What exactly are they trying to do? And last year, You could see the plan as far as Bryce Young, but that plan didn't work out because the wrong coaching staff was in place and the wrong personnel was in place. And there was injuries to the offensive line. I can kind of see what they wanted to do. This year, they're taking a more measured approach. They're not trying to put Band-Aids and duct tape on everything. They're trying to do it organically, like taking time drafting a quarterback and actually putting guys around him, like getting somebody who actually fits the modern NFL and who's worked with some guys recently who have been reclamation projects and getting them to play their best football, to fixing the offensive line, worrying about the trenches and making the smart, shrewd decisions as far as trades and contracts, even though, of course, I have my qualms with Luvu and Burns not being here. I can see a vision more than I saw it in years past. Looking at the draft and the moves that they made, the players that they took, a lot different than the previous 3 seasons under the old regime with Scott Fitter as a GM. And, of course, David Tepper having plenty to say when it comes to the decisions that have been made in Carolina the last couple of years. Do the Panthers have an identity? We wanted to know that over the last couple of seasons. Dan Morgan answered that on Tuesday, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, of all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. A few more questions that Dan Morgan asked, some of my takeaways from what he had to say, and we'll talk a little bit about what Bryce Young and Jadeveon Clowney had to say on Tuesday. Nothing that really stood out to me that much, to be honest, so thought about getting into it earlier, but a few more things I want to touch on here about Dan Morgan, what he had to say on Tuesday. Then we'll get to Bryce and Jadeveon here in just a moment before we wrap up the show. Do the Panthers have an identity? Matt Rule, he didn't have an identity for his team. They just were undisciplined. They didn't really know what to do offensively. And there was one point in time, hey, we're going to be a zone running team. And that was identity for a couple weeks. And then they went back to just being what they were, which is a bad football team. Frank Reich, I don't know what the identity. The last time the Panthers had an identity, it was an 11-game stretch. After they lost that first game where it felt like Steve Wilkes really just punted it when they played the Rams on the road, this team had an identity. They were going to be a smash-mouth, ground-and-pound football team on offense, take their opportunities through the air of DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall, and they were going to play physical defense. Really, they're going to play Carolina Panthers football. And we have not seen that over the last couple of years. And Dan Morgan, of all people here in Carolina, especially with all the changes within the organization and on the roster, he knows what keep pounding means. He knows what football is supposed to look like here in Charlotte. He knows what kind of a winning culture and attitude this city has when this Panthers team is playing to the expectations of what we have seen in the past, really became accustomed to for a period of time there in the mid to late 2000s, toward 2010s rather, and even in the early aughts. So he understands. Do the Panthers have an identity? Dan Morgan was asked about that on Tuesday, saying Coach Canales is going to set the tone. But ultimately, the best teams that he's been around have been player-driven. He said, quote, "So I think the players should really decide what type of team they want, what type of culture they want, and what our locker room looks like and what we look like on the playing field." And I love that. You can blame Matt Rule. You can blame Frank Reich. You can blame all the coaches that you want. The honest truth is the players have not executed. They haven't. Plenty of guys have gone out there and had opportunities, and they have failed in those opportunities. The coach has got to do a better job putting them in position, but the players make the plays, man. And I do think that a lot of times we overrate how good of a coach is. Like Bill Belichick's obviously a great coach. We saw, though, once Brady left, things weren't the same, and they were never going to be the same. But the wheels fell off there in New England. There's a reason why he's not head coach in New England anymore. the quarterback is important, but the players, man, it's about the players. And any good coach will always say, I'm only as good as the guys who I have on my roster. And the players are the ones who really deserve the credit. In the end, the coach is the one who has to take the blame. But also understand the players got to take the blame. The players got to be responsible. They got to work out in the offseason. They got to do their best to get better. They got to take the coaching, and they need to execute on Sundays. And quite honestly, these guys have not executed on Sundays. As much as you may love some of the guys on the team and some of the guys who are no longer here, it wasn't like they were winning games with Christian McCaffrey, as great as he is. I'm not putting on Christian at all. Don't listen to that and think I am. DJ Moore was great, wasn't out there winning games. And I wouldn't blame DJ at all, except for the Atlanta game where he threw his helmet off. Can't do that. And I think he's not here. He's not here anymore. So I think we can all sit here and agree, like, yes, the rules and all that sucks. Got to let the players be emotional. Still act like you've been there before. Problem was you hadn't been there before. So you miss those guys. Brian Burns, you miss him. Wasn't like you were winning games with Brian Burns anyways. Wasn't like you were winning games with Frankie Louvu. And there's plenty of guys who are still here who haven't won anything over the last couple of seasons, and they got to get it right. So I love that he says the players have to decide what type of team they want to be, what culture they want, what the locker room is going to look like, and how they're going to play on the field. And that's a player saying that. Other GMs, like Scott Bitter, is he going to say something like that? Probably not. But Dan Morgan, having been in their shoes, been in that locker room, he's going to say that. Now, the buy-in is something that we've seen. Like, these guys, they bought in. Shaq Thompson talked about this during mandatory minicamp, that he is surprised as how quickly they all have come together, which that gets me a little giddy. And I got to tell myself, take a deep breath. Don't get too hyped up. Don't sit here and start buying into it and drinking the Kool-Aid. You got to wait, let them prove themselves first before you hop on any sort of bandwagon, if there is a Panthers bandwagon anymore. But the buy-in. This is what Dan Morgan had to say. He said, quote, they've definitely bought into Coach Canales and what he's preaching. I think it also talks a lot about the type of character guys that we're bringing in here. You can tell there's certain kind of dudes they want to have here on this roster. Dudes who love football, who are going to work hard, who are going to buy into the team. There's the buy-in. We talked about the energy. All that has been around since the offseason program. And then finally, talk about camp competitions. I told y'all yesterday when I was looking at training camp as a whole, I didn't really see any competitions for starting jobs outside of possibly kicker. Dan Morgan was asked about this by our guy, Alex Zeitler, Charlotte Observer. Is there going to be a kicker competition? He said, quote, there's going to be a competition all over the roster. Yeah, there will be a competition there. This would suggest Panthers aren't really looking into a new deal for Eddie Pinheiro just yet. And I have brought this up too. Harrison Mevis has a bigger leg. Harrison Mevis was not as accurate as Pinheiro was in college. We know Pinheiro, the numbers never lie. Third most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL, which still is just a startling stat. But he's been at least the third most accurate kicker since he entered the league in 2019. Now, was he the third best kicker of all time in NFL history? I wouldn't say that. Morton Anderson, he exists. He's a Hall of Famer. Obviously, Justin Tucker, he exists. I feel like Butker's also been better. He's not a top 3 kicker of all time. May not even be a top 5 kicker of all time. Just looking at Vinatieri, we're not going to throw him up there. But he has been good since he's been in the league and when he's been healthy. And the Panthers shouldn't necessarily put themselves in a situation where they don't have a reliable kicker. This is also not a team that's contending for anything, in my opinion, this season. And who knows? Maybe not next season either. We'll see how long it takes. When they're ready, as Dan Morgan said, then they'll be a playoff team. I don't think they're ready right now. Don't know if they'll be ready next year. We will see whenever that happens. Either way, they could reasonably, because this is not a team vying for those playoff spots, they could try to go with the younger player in Mevis, who's got a bigger leg, work on the accuracy, see how he handles these situations, and pay less instead of paying a kicker in Eddie Pinheiro top of the line money. And they only have so much cap space. I saw someone put a tweet out there just talking about how the Panthers have like the 30th most cap space in the league. Now, of course, this guy went out and he found the lowest figure from Spot Track. Over the cap had the Panthers with more money. Also, the NFLPA's public salary cap report had them with more money. So it's just funny that this one Twitter account found the lowest cap number for the Panthers and said, look at this. Look how bad this organization is, when there's other probably more accurate numbers that had the Panthers still not a lot of cap space, but with a higher number than the one that was presented out there on Twitter the other day. And it's not a shot at the person. I just find it funny, as I know we're all sick of it And it's just like, there we go. It's kind of like, it's not the hyperbole, but it is just the alarmist on all of us when it comes to this team. Whenever we look at something like, why can't they get it right? So Pinheiro, feel like they should pay him, but right now he's got to earn that job. Quickly, like with Bryce and Jadeveon, like Clowney didn't really say a lot. I do like his energy, and he's been pretty matter of fact and honest in his conversations with the media since he's come here. He talked about communication being really important with all the new guys that come in, especially, of course, defensively, and that's where his focus is at. He's not even – someone asked about the offense. You've seen a guy you think might break out. Is I haven't seen these guys. When the pads go on, we'll have a better understanding. And he really talked about energy, saying that can be the difference. He said simply, that can be the difference. When he's asked about it, I think it was Deshaun Brown of WSOC who asked him simply, can that be the difference? Just the energy of a team? He said, yes. The energy a team brings to practice every day can be the difference between winning and losing. And he's looking forward to see how they find ways to win this year. He said he's a winner. And I'm excited to see what he is able to do. I really am. I hate the pressure that's going to be on him because the injuries in the position room. I know there's obviously a lot of expectations. The money the Panthers given him provided those expectations. Also, coming home has provided him. And we all know Jadeveon Clowney before we saw what he's done in the NFL. If you lived in Rock Hill area, you were aware of him. I mean, everyone who lives in Charlotte knows it. But you were aware of this dude, and you watched him at South Carolina. You knew what kind of player he was. And in the NFL, he has not always been the player that we expected. He's had injuries. He's been maybe the wrong scheme fit, all of that. Late in his career, he's trying to be a Pro Bowler. He's trying to win back in his hometown. And I hope he does it. Honestly, for him, more than for you and for the organization and for me, the podcast. I hope for him, what a great story it'd be to come back home and to win. And Stephon Gilmore, his boy, they chat, they work out. Stephon's waiting on the right call. So we'll wait and see where that happens. And Bryce Young, he held throwing sessions in California this offseason. He had a conversation with Cam Newton. We saw the red carpet at the ESPYs as Cam was out there doing interviews. Him and Bryce had a conversation there, but also they've had a couple of conversations, and Bryce has just talked about how they've been in the same situation. I loved how David Newton of ESPN was like, well, Cam was Rookie of the Year and set all these records, and the record was not great, but it wasn't as bad as 2-15. Have you guys really been in the same situation? And Bryce is like, okay, there's more things than just what happens on the field, like in life and off the field, all that kind of stuff that they can relate there. So good to know that Cam is out there talking to Bryce and really just told him, keep working, keep your head down. Don't get worried about what I say, what y'all say, what anybody else there says, and just go do your job. And it's been a different offseason for him. He doesn't feel pressure. Someone asked if he feels it. He said he wouldn't say it's any more than before. There's always an urgency for him and wanting to be the best that he can be, and a team can be every day. He doesn't look at it as pressure from the outside. It's more internal pressure and wanting to be successful and, of course, turn things around here. And the playoff drought, someone asked about it, he said the players don't talk about it at all. As far as Bryce Young goes, he's only been here for one season. It's not his fault that the playoff drought is 6 years. I guess you could point to last year, but it wasn't his fault that it was 5 years when he headed into Carolina. And I still don't think it's his fault. Last year didn't go be a playoff team because of all the things that were around him and all the things that went wrong. It'll be interesting to see how he develops over the course of the next couple of weeks as the Panthers head into the 2024 season. I'm excited, and you should be excited. I'll be even more excited once we actually have football happening in September on the field in games that matter. But a slow march towards the beginning of the 2024 season begins in earnest. Not really, actually begins 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning here in Uptown Charlotte, and I cannot wait. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I will be back with you on Friday to answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll be back with you on Thursday as we react to day 1 of training camp here in Carolina.